Hey folks, I thought we'd start the educational part of things out this year by talking about something very important, and yet something that very few people really know how to do really well, and that is how to test the clarinet for tuning. And of course, we'll not be just using this method or approach for testing the clarinet for tuning. We'll also be using this method for actually setting the clarinet up for actual performance. So, with that, let's get started. Before we go into the actual tuning, we have to start looking not just at the clarinet, but ourselves. One of the real critical factors in testing for tuning is you. That's right, you have to really play consistently. What do I mean by that? You know, many people are not very disciplined when it comes to voicing, and so their pitch, color, and shape are all over the place. They play, say, the throat tones with middle or low forward tongue position, and they play the high tones with a higher back tongue position, and everything in between. And this consequently causes them, as far as tuning goes, to play what I call FWARP. That is, flat in some areas, sharp in other areas. Well, you have to be consistent with your tongue position, consistent with your voicing, in order to see how the clarinet actually tunes in itself. Because if you're varying things by varying that tongue position up and down, and your embouchure pressure is not consistent, your air column's not consistent, then you'll never get a true picture of the clarinet. What you'll do is get a picture of how inadequate your own playing is. So it's very incumbent on you to work on all your techniques so that you're very, very consistent before you start doing any testing at all. What about the conditions of testing? Well, you never get an objective idea about how a clarinet tests in some extreme temperature conditions. If the room is very cold, the clarinet's going to play very, very flat no matter what you do. If the room is very hot, the clarinet's going to go sky high. It's going to sail sky high within itself no matter what you do. The best thing is to try to find a room condition that's somewhere about 70 or 72 degrees. Once you're in that kind of room, warm the clarinet up generally for 4 or 5 minutes, and then you're ready to begin testing. When you're trying to adjust the clarinet to play in tune, say for performance, there are two goals that you want to strive for, not one. The first thing is to get the clarinet generally down in pitch, 440, 442, whatever you're playing at. The second goal is to get the clarinet as well in tune with itself as you can in the process. For instance, a lot of band directors like to tune on the clarion G, the concert B flat. Well, that's a clarion C, the concert B flat. That's a very sharp note on the clarinet. And if you try to tune by pulling the barrel only to get that clarion C down, you're going to pull the barrel so far out, usually you're going to throw the throat tones way out of tune. Well, that's an approach, say, of tuning one note on the clarinet, but throwing 5 or 6 other notes, and maybe more than that, out of tune in the process. That's an unacceptable approach to trying to tune the clarinet. A better approach is to try to tune the throat tones, especially the open G, by pulling the barrel. Once that open G is in tune, then we, with our disciplined voicing, we sustain that open G. I like to play the open G with the right hand cover, by the way. Sustain that open G, get it nice and settled in pitch, and then slur to the G above it. If that G is sharp, which is the first tone hole in the right hand, I pull the right hand, and that brings the G down, but it also brings the clarion D and the clarion C and the clarion B, and all those notes tend to be sharp to one degree or another. Okay? So instead of trying to pull the barrel and tune the clarion C, what I do is I pull the barrel partially so the throat tones are well in tune, but I don't pull so far that they're flat, and then I do the rest of the tuning for the right hand by pulling rest of the tuning for the clarinet by pulling in the right hand, and that brings the normally sharp clarion G down, and of course the almost ubiquitously sharp D, C, and B down on the clarinet. So I've accomplished both of my goals in the process of just generally tuning the clarinet. Now, once I've done that, once I've got my octave Gs in tune, the throat tones are in tune with the long pipe clarion tones, the clarinet's generally down to pitch, now I'm ready to either perform or I'm ready to test individual tones. You know, whenever you play a note, whenever you attack a note, you perhaps have noticed on a tuner that the note ends up being quite sharp. Think about striking a match. You know, the match goes poof, like that, and it's very bright, and it first flares up, and then it settles down into a very steady kind of glow, so it's producing off a consistent amount of light and heat after that big first explosion of light, okay? Well, in some ways, playing pitches like that, attacking pitches are like that. You attack the pitch, it goes sharp, tends to go a little bit sharp on the attack, and then it settles into a somewhat lower version of itself, okay? And that's where you really want to test the note, not when you attack it, but when it settles into that lower version. How do you do that? How best do you do that? Well, you need to play the note in phrase context, okay? And for that, you can have some very, very simple things, like the exercise I'm going to play for you in this example. There, you notice that, that I start out by playing the note I want to tune, but I don't just attack the note and play it. What I do is I play a slow, slurred eighth note pattern that sort of trapezes around that note, and that pattern ends up on that note, and I sustain it. And in its sustained version there, after I play the little eighth note passage, then I can really check the note. That's real world tuning. That's where that note really tunes when you're playing in phrase context, okay? And that's what you want to be able to check on the clarinet, because 95%, 98% of the notes that you're going to play as far as worrying about tuning are going to be in phrase context.